I suppose what we've discussed yesterday in connection with the retreat and Milarepa's experience in exclusion. In relationship to that, maybe I should describe something of the Mahamudra principle. Generally, that enlightenment of Milarepa is based on the idea of Mahamudra experience. And Mahamudra is process that developed through highly involved in the realization of nature of life, which has its root in the understanding of Hinayana principle to begin with. That Hinayana's approach of understanding the pain and origin of the pain, and the Mahayana's approach of self-giving, bodhisattva's activity, and self-giving self-service brings a notion of a non-existence of oneself, shunyata experience. Then comes the Mahamudra experience, which is sense of non-existence of oneself. The shunyata principle also becomes questionable. That there should be some sense of openness and relating with the phenomenal world as it is. Which takes a lot of process. So as we have gone through Milarepa's life story, that he is a person who has been fortunate enough to able to cut through the spiritual materialism at the beginning as preparatory training, and from there he was able to launch his discovery of three yana principles, and finally into the Mahamudra principle, which is he was able to learn, able to see the messages, phenomena world that plays, and able to relate with that kind of message. Such message is not regarded as just simply making experience in life as a purely mystical, that you are following divine providence or divine link, that the word is whispering in your ear constantly to tell you the meaning of life and the phenomena life that you're involved. But it's a question of not relying on conventional resources of proof or metaphysical understandings how things ought to be or should be, but in a sense of that experience of a life has its own ordinariness in the message. The ordinariness becomes quite subtle, and only those who are gone through the process of disappointment, pain, and the loneliness can only experience the message. Disappointment in the Hinayana level, that life consists of constant dissatisfaction, pain, and the loneliness in the sense of a Mahayana level of shunyata experience, that there's nothing that you can hang on to. And after those experiences, then you had the Mahamudra experience of experiencing the true reality, if you could say such a word. True reality, the absolutely true reality. The reality as it is. And Mиларепы had gone through having his relationship with the retreat, his setup, and the subtleties of loneliness, and his romantic notion of being in the retreat. Everything is being gone through, and then he began to relax a little bit. And the course of relaxation, that again, familiar, our dear ego, comes back and approaches us into all kinds of temptations, all kinds of subtle temptations, such as like the challenges, through fear. That has been one of the prominent ones. In a sense, same thing is that when we experience our own individual, our own retreat, that there is a constant challenge of fear, that frightened of something, ourselves, irritated by ourselves to begin with, then the fear begins to come through. So, the sense of loneliness is the first step to get into retreat, and its romantic qualities. And then when the romantic qualities wears out, then there's a sense of fear, which comes next. All ranges of fears. Fear of simplistic fear of a boogeyman, up to the point of sophisticated fear of losing one's ego. All kinds of fear comes through. And those fear do not just simply act as practical jokes, but they act as a real thing. All kinds of mental activities begin to manifest themselves as solid entities, begin to strike back to us. In the Milarepa's life story of challenges from the wise demoness, and the stories like that are also connected with that kind of fear, that you project your fear and the fear bounces back with the echo of the rocks and the caves. With some subtle sense that there is a message in somewhere, but since we haven't reached the Mahamudra level yet, so therefore we are unable to see the messages or the informative aspect of it. But we developed a sense of haunting qualities that made relationship with the loneliness, aloneness, absolutely, seemingly okay. You settle down, you have your daily routines in the retreat, you've established, you have your schedules and practice, and how to handle one's life is completely worked out. But then there's something else, which is fear. Physically able to relate with oneself, then psychologically another kind of logic, another kind of perspective begin to change its whole approach altogether. The fear of whether we are kidding ourselves, or fear of that possibly there's going to be a fantastic disasters, which also accompanied with a certain amount of aggression at the same time. Looking back on our past, and extremely resentful about experiences we have gone through in the past, our parents or our teacher or life situations or our friends or the style of education that one is raised, numerous things of all kinds of fear that comes through. The fear accompanied with the anger, resentful. And one of the Milarepa's approach to that kind of fear is, it seemed to be, and resentful, it seemed to be the entrapment or the imprisonment of the samsaric world that was terrifying. That was really bad. And a lot of songs of Milarepa's you can read. He's begin to mock the mockery of samsaric world. And you remember the story that he sang a song to an old lady and mocking her state of being, that how old she is and how she is pathetic, and that is a reflection of the samsaric world on you. And with the, after 4 lines there is a slight openness, so maybe things will be better for you, and then goes on and goes on explaining grotesque poetic analogies of how the cause of our pain and the cause of our imprisonment is purely due to the samsaric world. And all kinds of analogies that which says that you ordinary folks cultivate ground, tame the ground, use a plow and sow grain, and nurse your crops, collect your harvest and collect your grains. But I, the yogi, who does entirely different style, the ground is the alley of vijnana, the common ground, and taming of the ground. Instead of using ordinary plow, I use my discipline, cutting through ego, sow a seed of body, mind, and it grows the crop of wisdom, and so forth. There's still somewhat mocking quality in the style of a young poet, that it is much easier to compose a poem if you're making mockery of something. And it is very difficult to write a good poem out of affirmative nature. And often it is being regarded as being too corny or too flowery. In fact, people do appreciate that satirical type of poems, much more so than affirmative ones, lately particularly. Example of Ginsberg's poems, that how horrific is the city, is a real epitome of hell, not the real hell but a suburban hell, experiencing a hell, capital of hell, but being in a suburb of the hell. How monotonous it is, how terrible it is, how political structure of the country fucked up, and how everybody is inflicting pain on everybody, how grotesque the whole thing is. People might regard that as a genius work of art. People do, in fact. But it seems to be much easier to criticize trying to pick weak points in the phenomenal world and attack them, which seems to automatically suggest that you're out of the picture altogether. Subconsciously, the readers of the poem would find a certain amount of allegiance to the poet who create satirical poems. And they begin to associate it with the writers of the poem, who is supposedly outside of that particular realm of involvement. They're seeing it from different perspectives, so sense of freshness comes from that. So in fact, a sense of freshness comes from some kind of relief. If you take a photograph of concentration camp and it was published in a magazine, that you appreciate the person who took the photograph, who saw the grotesqueness in the work of art. And moreover, that he was able to get heart to it, and he was able to print his shot in the magazine. So somebody comes back from death and relays message to us back home. It's delightful. Like Jane Fonda coming back from North Vietnam and giving us a slideshow talk. It's very entertaining. Somebody who's been to the real world and came back and able to relate with us, intermediary from death and birth. Right. Milarepa's poems have some kind of qualities not as crude and politically inclined, grotesque, as urban poet, but he is a rural poet who saw the rural world is a possible potential of urban hell. At the same time, the affirmative aspect is how beautiful loneliness, aloneness, being in the countryside and the high mountains erupted with the clouds, and the monkeys bouncing around in the trees, and the birds sing their beautiful songs, and underneath to the waterfalls you begin to listen to the sounds of the brook, and the caves hang around in its solidness. And sun shines, moon shines, who cares? The only thing I care is this beautiful aloneness, which speaks for itself, its constant companion, in spite of all these happenings. Affirmative poetry. In fact, we could study the different styles of poetry that Milarepы composed, songs Milarepы sang. The different styles from beginning to end, that satirical aspect of samsara and how terrible it is. And then on the other hand, how beautiful that you got out of those involvement, and your poetic aloneness is by no means referred as samsara, but it is beautiful, it is associated with the nirvana, freedom. I'm not talking about the monotonous of sunshine as the moon shines, but the monkeys jump irritatingly, do the same trick. The stars are there stuck in the sky, and see the same thing all over again every day. Kind of a rural appreciation of samsaric world, but at the same time, anybody who writes poems about a countryside, people always associate with goodness of God, as the old phrase that God made the country, man made the cities. So anything to do with a natural thing, the trees does not have to be constructed, and each branches are not man-made. Nobody put a hammer and nail over it, and nobody had to stuck a piece of fruit over it or put artificial flowers over it. So everything's being so spontaneously there. And it changes and comes back again and again. It's wonders of beauty. It's fantastic. I think there's a change of tone in Millarepı's poems if you look through each songs as we go on. At the beginning, very ambitious little yogi who hates the world he belongs, who came from, doing the same regular thing, milking cow, herding for animals, washing the pot, boiling in the kitchen, taking care of screaming children, wiping out mustard shit from baby's bottom. Those are samsaric assets. samsaric hassles, seemingly. Where the things that if you don't have to attend anything, and things grow by itself, the monkeys do not ever pay it to bounce around in the they just do it by themselves. The birds sing spontaneously, sun and moon shines without anybody's effort. It does not cost anybody any effort. And those are associated with nirvana kind of thing, spontaneity. It's kind of love and light approach that anything natural, unmade, not man-made, associated with the goodness, beauty, excitable, which is not particularly Milarepa's problem alone, but it is a universal thing that all the great mystics talk about the beauties of those things. And I'm sure millions of people converted because of those logic into appreciation of the God's creation. That everything is happened spontaneously. But somewhat there's not enough reference to Mahamudra at that point. It's still kind of gain, one-upmanship. The process continues. The tone of Milarepa's song began to change at the point when he is beginning to relate more with the people. People begin to ask him to give instruction, begin to teach him, and he began to change his tone. And also he began to change his ideas. That there's a faint, throughout the half of the book, there's a faint suggestion of carelessness. Samsara and its hassles, okay, and so does Nirvana has its hassles as well. So I don't care. That's a very interesting thing, that if you're going to look again into the books, 2 volumes that we have available in this English language now, is the closest we can get. If you look through carefully, you see the change of a slight tone, there's suggestion at the beginning, then slowly changing its tone into a potential old dog quality, the carelessness. But carelessness is not really sloppiness from that point of view, but carelessness in the sense of some slight humor begin to develop, that everything's a big joke. And in one of the songs, the later part of Milarepa's life, he began a song, sing a song, and somebody told him that people in the country think you are mad, you are lunatic. He said, let it be, let me sing a song about that. And Vajradhara is mad, and Telopa is mad, Naropa is mad, Mahaprabhu is mad, and so I am, the Yogi Milarepa is mad. And the thing seems to be less emphasis on moralistic emphasis. There's some kind of bravery begin to happen in half part of the whole thing. And before the madness obviously associated with the samsaric world, those hassles that involved with the managing world. Quite possible that Milarepa think imagery of his previous early part of his songs in his life related with it. I'm sure he had his mind that as a basic character as his aunt, who was an extraordinarily fucked up person, and real representation of samsaric world. And she thought only way to make a relationship with the Milarepas, not demanding further indebtedness, that's right, yeah. Is bring him food. It's almost the level of a Jewish mother at some point. The kind of peasant mentality that important thing is food. And if you bring him food, that's what you need, and then all the problems will be solved. I'm sure Milarepa was thinking of her as example or catalyst of samsaric world, samsaric mind as his aunt. And at some stage that he began to develop the cosmic aunt, that she's not the only one person who is exemplifying samsara, typifying samsara, but there are other aunts. Great mother, samsaric mothers who perpetuate their own trips constantly. And that slowly developed. And at the end that his approach towards Mahamudra principle began to dawn through. I think details of Mahamudra situations we could discuss tomorrow, in particular in connection with his discovery of Trungpa and the Gampopa, which makes very solid examples of that. We should discuss them tomorrow, and perhaps we could stop at this point here. I think there's several considerations. If we're going to study Milarepa's life as practitioners, we can study as identifying with him, and also we could look at his songs, his change of psychology from almost anthropological way, which is equally important. Change of mood, change of attitude is equally important. So we should be trying to be, if we're going to study him and his approach, his life, we should be both the practitioners as well as scholars at the same time.
He wrote many of his songs when he was completely alone. How do we have them now?
How what?
He wrote many of his songs when he was completely alone. How is it that we have those songs now, that we have them written down? How did we ever hear them?
That remains a mystery. Nobody knows. According to the stories that the Dakinis wrote down, and it was released to the public. But we do not know how it's done. But one of the stories that Milarepa told his story to Trungpa, like the translation of Tibetan's great yogi, Evans Prince translation, that it was that he retold the whole story. He recomposed his songs that I was saying, and but he had a clear memory of what he sang, particular word, so he was recomposing his life story or whatever. So we are uncertain.
I'm interested in, I don't know exactly what the question is, but the idea composing a song in some ways would seem to be entertainment, and all art in some ways would be entertainment, but I get the feeling from the way you talk about it that it was a very important thing for him to do, to actually compose those songs, although they're, beautiful in a sense.
Well, let me tell you that Milarepa's way of composing song is not quite the same as Ginsberg composing his blues or whatever. What's this? What's another one? He sings in his
The
song.
blues?
Yeah. What's another one? The latest style Ginsberg that developed is
What? Chanting Ginsberg.
hmm?
Chanting.
No, he takes tremendous pride in this
Harmonium.
Oh, harmonium.
harmony with what's the tune it's called? It's the
Bluegrass?
huh? Blue what?
Not bluegrass.
The blues.
The blues, yeah, the blues, yeah.
It's
And it's yeah, it's a kind of what you call this rhythm of,
Shake the page.
no,
12-bar blues?
'cause they connect with the rock sort of
Spirituals?
Rock and roll.
hmm?
The Naropa seminar, that song he sang was sort of blues, Negro spiritual type.
Yeah. I mean, obviously Millarepы didn't sing song in those fashions as poet who composed a song on the spot, which has some, huh?
Improvised, yeah.
Yeah, but I don't know. So, but anyhow, that we get some ideas that someone who sings song on the spot, poet and saint, not quite in the Ginsberg fashion, is hard to imagine. But singing songs from that point of view is very natural action in Tibet those days. That there's the story of Gesar and Ning, that when the warriors meet together they begin to fight each other. They don't fight immediately. They stop and look at each other first. They sing a song to each other of insult or whatever to rouse them. They compose on the spot, and then they have a fight. And the same as the Milarepa's mudra of holding his hand over his ear is the traditional posture that he could hear his own voice, which is a traditional thing. So singing a song is not just purely entertainment, but it's a way of speaking. That you say something. If you want to say something special, you sing a song and say it to a person. That's the traditional thing that developed in Tibet, including, as I mentioned, the warrior classes as well as the kings or the saints. That's the traditional thing. So, in a sense, everybody's poet, in some sense.
It's not an artificial
No,
way of doing it.
Milarepa songs are not scholarly poetic songs. The scholar poets write poetry which is highly colored by Mahabharata stories and synonyms of all kinds. But a Milarepa song is just like a conversation in verse.
Did they rhyme?
In Tibetan, yeah. I mean, it has rhythm rather than rhyme. And there are 7 lines, da 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 da, or there's 9 lines, that goes much longer, like the song Milarepы composed for the grandmother is 9-line, which is much longer, more arduous. I'm sure they specially choose that line for the grandmother. It's very struggling. Da 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 da, and it goes on. The short ones in 5 lines. So there are a set of patterns that developed, as well as which is connected with the rhythms of the mood.
Rinpoche, the naked ego thing, seems the ego stays functioning as some organic part of the growth process all the way up. He, in the songs, he speaks a lot of alaya consciousness, and I think in one song he talks about innate ego, ego inborn, coming functional from the beginning in the primal consciousness. And I was wondering about the relation of that naked ego found at that stage and confronted at that stage, and innate ego, and perhaps of what elements of the watcher there are in innate ego, and that characteristic in naked ego.
I suppose there's a constant watcher, as long as there's a split, a dualistic split. There's a watcher. There's a sense of holding on to some ground, even if it's alaya consciousness. Still there's a negative ego which provides self-asserting process, constant happening. And it's inevitable.
It's also useful too, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's not that what you're saying is how inevitable it should be. But it is very valuable and useful, inevitable and necessary to function ego in its fullest sense.
Yeah, because when it came to the facing of naked ego in that situation, it seemed valuable and functional
Yeah,
and
very
necessary.
much so.
And all the
Absolutely.
times we've spoken of the watcher, we've always spoken of it pejoratively. And yet it seems like anything else in the Vajrayana, you make use of absolutely everything.
But
Everything, especially
watcher is not
something-
regarded as something that should go. It's like watcher is not as same as something that one should hang on to, but at the same time it will go away. Equivalent of watcher is Attorney General. But this past Attorney General, Mitchell, wasn't good at watchers, and therefore he should go. But in terms of ego's demonstration or ego's administration, there's no irrelevant Attorney Generals. They're all relevant. And they all speak, they are very legal in terms of ego's perspective as concerned. So watch is always useful. And it is very interesting analogy that the Mitchell had to go first before we get to the president.
Che, the way you phrased it yesterday was that the ego would be left naked, its clothing would be stripped off. In other words, an ideal projection or credential would be stripped off, leaving the actual situation. But it seems like that the degree to which the projection would be destroyed would be equal to the degree to which the projector would be destroyed. There wouldn't be just one, the projection stripped off with the ego just there. It seemed like it would destroy one would be destroy the other, or part would be seems equal.
I think so, yeah. Well, when there is no watcher, then the fundamental ego is without a defense. And projections diminish. When projections diminishes, the projectors have no function at the same time.
So the total, then the total destruction, I mean speaking theoretically, the total destruction of the projector and the projection would be the total destruction of samsara and nirvana. Or total
Well, that's
destruction of
samsara and nirvana
experience.
consists of,
Ego projects
of
ego.
the king and its subjects. That's all, yeah.
How does a retreat in the country relate to working with negative energy in an urban environment? I mean, is one a prerequisite to the other, or I mean, do they help each other? Or?
Prerequisite, yeah, definitely. Particularly in this society, in the United States, is nobody was 100% brought up in the countryside, and they have some dealings with the urban environment. So I think they confirm each other's experience.
But the retreat in the country would be the final end.
I wouldn't say they have to go back to the urban environment to validate their retreat. Otherwise, there's no reference point.
Do you think that after Millarepes started doing retreats that the samsaric experience of speeding was still a problem for him?
After Millarepes' retreat?
When he started doing retreats,
Yeah, very much so. He's angry more on samsara even than before.
and how did he deal with that problem?
Well, he's being frightened by all kinds of demons, and he tried all kinds of methods to calm them. And one thing is that he had to live very frugally, and he had to relate with his life, food, shelter, very scanty his food and everything. And suddenly all ambition began to fall apart.
But, for example, when he, suppose he reacted to certain experiences of retreat by speeding, would he meditate more, or is there a method of actually relating to speed itself that cuts it?
I don't think there's a particular method, but by process it cuts by itself.
It just becomes so intense that
Yeah, it's a wearing out process, yeah.
You mentioned that his retreats had both elements of regression and fear. Is there a particular connection? Like, would you get more of a fear trip if you were more aggressive? Or, what is the...
What is the what?
the relationship between his feeling resentful, or is there none? I mean,
Well, I think there is a sense of resentfulness, but that's from the fear of his own wrongdoing and his own fucked upness, which somewhat create a balance. that everything's not pure, you should balance, you should blame on something else. And he began to find that there's another way of working with it. Automatically, it is in him, in fact, that something could be worked out rather than blaming on something else.
Would you say something again, please, about free will? It seems to me that there's a great deal of contradiction in mysticism about just whether we can't do anything or we can do something or we can only do by not doing.
Well, we can do, to begin with, we can do something by creating a problem. Having created a problem, and the problem is got worsened, and it becomes very complicated. And then we begin to doubt about whether we should solve the problem or not. And then we begin to realize what is the problem at all, in any case. And then we begin to realize that the problem was not really a problem, but it is a path for us to relate with. So it takes looking back, and then finally no one's looked back to.
But I was referring to the amount of freedom in the sense, for instance, that it seems to be possible for some people and not for others. So what you say is possible, it seems to be possible only for some.
I would say possible for everybody if they're willing to work with it. Yeah. Yes.
What is the dynamic that takes place from the...
What is the what?
What is the dynamics that takes place from the transparent ego, from the naked ego to the transparent ego?
I think it partly a sense of being hassled.
A sense of being hassled?
Yeah.
I don't quite understand.
Well, being hassled because you have no definite ground to hang on to. That you'll be attacked from all directions.
And so your ego appears transparent rather than...
Yeah, because ego does not have any fundamental logics to hang on to.
You have no reference point.
Yeah, even nakedness is not enough. So it had to become transparent.
And you realize the situation is more hopeless?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yesterday, you said that when you're in retreat, the loneliness is your only resource. You know? Well, you said something to that effect, that it was, that loneliness was your resource.
Yeah.
But somebody, last question yesterday, somebody brought that up. But what about when you come out of retreat?
Well, you still be lonely. You'll still be lonely when you come out of retreat. That nobody has done the retreat except you. So you're still lonely. That loneliness goes on all the time. People have prison programs. Being in prison. It's saying the same thing, that you're being alone in prison, and when you come out of prison, you feel self-conscious that you come out of prison, that nobody will accept you. Same thing happens. That when you come out of retreat, you somewhat, you look slightly eccentric, and slightly different.
It took going into retreat to really emphasize that.
Yeah, sure. we might should stop our discussion today at that point. And see you tomorrow. And there seemed to be some announcement in connection with loneliness. Please don't go away. She thought the only way to make a relationship with the Mиларепes, not demanding further indebtedness, that's right, yeah, is bring him food. It's almost the level of a Jewish mother at some point. The kind of peasant mentality that important thing is food. And if you bring him food, that's what you need, and then all the problems will be solved. I'm sure Milarepa was thinking of her as example or catalyst in samsaric world, samsaric mind, as his aunt. And at some stage that he began to develop the cosmic aunt, that she's not the only one person who is exemplifying samsara, typifying samsara, but there are other aunts. Great mother, samsaric mothers who perpetuate their own trips constantly. And that slowly developed. And at the end that his approach towards Mahamudra principle began to dawn through. I think details of Mahamudra situations we could discuss tomorrow, in particular in connection with his discovery of Trungpa and the Gampopa, which makes very solid examples of that. We should discuss them tomorrow, and perhaps we could stop at this point here.